Hello, good morning.
Kuzu Sampula, Kuzu Sampo, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, La.
Nice to see you after so long, Level Hindu.
Oh,
Hi,
let's,
Hindu.
Madam Sonam. Oh, yeah,
Yes,
yes.
it's so nice to see you after so long.
Long time.
Kusambola.
Sambo, Bakara Lukuzu Sambo.
Good morning to all of you.
Morning, good morning.
Good morning, La Kuzu Sampo, La Champalexo.
Good morning to all. Kuzu Sampo.
Good morning, La.
Good morning. Good morning. Kuzu Sampo, good morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good morning, La. So we will wait another 1 minute, then we will begin our symposium, La. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning as well as good evening. My name is Rita Rai, and I, on behalf of the organizing committee of this symposium, Samchi College of Education, Teton Science School, Wyoming, the United States of America, and the Bhutan Youth Development Fund, would like to extend a warm welcome to our keynote speakers, paper and poster presenters, and our esteemed audience to this webinar. We regret having to postpone this webinar from January 17 to March 12 due to our involvement in the ongoing educational reforms. But then we are delighted to see such a large audience today. We would like to thank our keynote speakers, paper and poster presenters, as well as the audience for your patience and support in making this event possible today. I hope the audience enjoyed viewing and learning from the 11 virtual posters displayed by Bhutan's teacher educators and school teachers. So in today's symposium, there will be 9 paper presentations with 8 of them happening in 2 parallel sessions and one very special one in a common session. Today, I am joined by my 3 friends who will support the smooth running of this symposium. We have Ms. Shannon Subtrine and Ms. Leslie Cook, who will be in charge of coordinating the presentations in tracks 1 and track 2 respectively. Then we have Mr. Chris, the Professional Learning Program Administrator for Teton Science School, who will handle the technical aspects such as assigning us to breakout rooms and so on. So if you are having any trouble entering the breakout rooms or you have any other technical issues, please contact him for assistance. Now with that, I would like to invite Dr. Rinchen Dorji, President of Samchi College of Education, to open the symposium with his opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Rita, and good morning to all our participants from Bhutan, and good evening to all our colleagues from Teton Science Schools in Wyoming, Colorado, and all other keynote panelists and participants from America and other countries, if there are any. On behalf of Samchi College of Education and the Royal University of Bhutan, and the and Teton Science Schools Youth Development Fund in Bhutan, I would like to take this opportunity to extend a very hearty welcome to all the participants to this first ever 2022 International Place-Based Education Symposium that we are hosting here, via online platform. Thanks to the symposium organizing committee for giving me this opportunity to be part of this gathering of PBE enthusiasts and practitioners. As an educational administrator, I'm feeling a little odd and out of place to be amongst PBE classroom practitioners and PBE experts. In the midst of living with the coronavirus for over 2 years with frequent lockdowns, quarantine requirements, movement restrictions, the current crisis in Eastern Europe, the war between Russia and Ukraine, which has been quite a worrisome affair for many of the people around the world. This kind of collaboration and intellectual gathering of minds that brings together teacher educators, school teachers, policymakers, education specialists, curriculum experts, academics, PBE experts from across the world to discuss and deliberate on a common issue, on a common interest, that is place-based education, to me serves as a platform that restores faith and trust in the humanity, that our future is going to be much more promising than what we are experiencing at the moment. As a teacher educator, as a parent, as a citizen, to me, I see that place-based education offers so much in improving the quality of education by improving classroom teaching, learning, and assessment practices. Especially for Bhutan, it gives me a special sense of delight and some, deep sense of satisfaction in knowing that this particular symposium is happening at a time when we are working on reforming the whole education system in the country. If we as teacher educators, if we as classroom practitioners, if we as curriculum developers, if we as policymakers carefully look at place-based education as an educational approach that has a huge scope in providing many solutions to the current shortcomings and the pitfalls that we are experiencing in the education system, not just in Bhutan, but across the world. I think place-based education offers a wholesome package as an educational approach to address many of the issues that we are seeing today. To me, from day one, I heard about place-based education as an educational approach. I had that absolute faith and confidence in this educational approach in addressing many of the issues that we are facing today in our education system. As I stated earlier, that for us, this is a historic, symposium in many ways. This symposium in some ways, tells us that every initiative that we take in some ways aligns in helping us addressing the national issues, so that we are able to collectively contribute towards the realization of the national education goals that we have here in Bhutan, and the universal education goals that the world has committed to achieve around the world. When I was reading through the posters, the different posters that people had presented as part of this symposium, I could not just help myself, feeling so positively impressed. As an educator, I was so motivated. I was so encouraged. I felt so inspired in looking at some wonderful initiatives happening around place-based education in the country. And I know that, in many ways, place-based education in Bhutan, was initiated through our collaboration. When I say our, it's Bhutan, the education system here in Bhutan. I do not want to take this credit, give this credit to Samsi College, but I think the education fraternity here in Bhutan, the Ministry of Education through the earlier, Department of Curriculum, earlier REC, now renamed as Department of Curriculum and Professional Development. I've also noted that there were some, exchange programs going in between the schools through REC with Teton Science schools in the United States. For Samsi College of Education, we have had this long, standing collaboration with Teton Science schools to help us learn better learn and understand how we can, take place-based education principles in training our future teachers. In the last few years, we have been able to make quite a considerable progress, visible contributions and changes in the way we do things here at Samsi College of Education, especially in relation to place-based education as an educational approach. And for all the developments or the progress that we have seen in relation to place-based education in the country, we would like to thank people like Leslie and her colleagues there at Teton Science Schools for that, for making sure that that link and the collaboration is still continued. The fact that there are so many school teachers participating in this symposium, many of the paper presenters are coming from the school, the poster presenters coming from the school. This is an indication of a success story of PBE in the school. And I see that, our, curriculum, specialist and experts such as Lindu Drupa sir, who is, who works, I hope you are still working with DCPD, sir. Because when I checked your profile on the symposium brochure, I saw you, my Kakit village Kinalevidula. But thanks to our special gratitude and thanks to the kind of work that people like Lindu Drupa in the Department of Curriculum and Professional Development and other stakeholders within the Ministry of Education have initiated to make sure that place-based education takes a good grounding in our system. And to me, the fact that we see many school teachers being part of this, not just being a passive participant of this symposium, but people who are contributing in the form of papers and presenting, sharing their knowledge and understanding of PBE, sharing their experiences of PBE in their own classroom teaching is a testament, testimony that PBE has a scope and has a space in the Bhutanese education system. To all the teachers who are here actually, and my colleagues, teacher educators who are part of this symposium, especially those teachers who have been part of the teachers and teacher educators who have been part of the posters that you have presented. The posters, when I read through these posters, in every word, every line that I was reading the passion, the energy, the excitement, the knowledge, the understanding of PBE that each and every one of you have, and how you have managed to apply it to make a difference in your children's learning. As a teacher educator myself, as someone who is still passionate of teaching and dealing with young children, when I looked at those hard work that each and every one of you have done in your own practices, to me sometimes I felt so touched and inspired to see such positive energy that we have in our system, in our people. And the fact that we have such committed, dedicated people with high sense of professionalism. You have served to give me some hope in knowing that the education reform initiative that the country has initiated, following the command of His Majesty to reform the education system, is in good hands in Oila. Together, I think, we should be able to make some tangible, concrete differences in the system. And this symposium is one ways of bringing our minds together. And we are happy that we have international participants, especially from Health and Science schools from Wyoming. We would like to take this as an opportunity to learn from each other. And I hope that all the participants, including our colleagues from the United States, and sorry if there are any participants from other parts of the world, we hope to use this symposium as a platform, as an avenue to further sharpen our understanding of place-based education as an educational approach, so that each one of us succeeds in making making a wholesome difference in the way we teach our children, because His Majesty's the fourth and the current king, the present king, we have been hearing time and again from both the kings that our children, our future, they are our future leaders. If they are our future leaders, they are our future security. They are our future custodians. And if we want to have a secure future, a promising future, I think each and every one of us should be committed to give our best so that our future leaders are well educated, not just in terms of knowledge and skills, but more so in terms of being a good human being, good human beings with good heart. With this, I wish each and every one of you a very enriching learning experience, full of new insights, full of new insights that are personally rewarding and professionally satisfying. With this, I declare the symposium open. I know that there are a few more welcome notes coming. I also join them in welcoming each and every one of you to this, first ever international symposium on place-based education. Thank you and Kadinchela.
Thank you, President Sir, for your encouraging words and support for place-based education. We have realized that the place-based education principle aligns very well with the upcoming Bhutan baccalaureate program, and then we are confident that we'll be able to promote all areas of development mentioned in Bhutan baccalaureate program and assist our children in becoming constructive and contributory citizens of Bhutan through place-based education. Next, I would like to invite Leslie Cook, Interim Head of Professional Learning, Teacher Learning Center of Teton Science Schools, with her welcome note.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rita, and thank you, President Sir. Kuzu Zambola, it's so good to have you all here today. It is great joy to get to welcome you to the Place-Based Education Symposium and to share a little bit of the overview with you all. I want to start by acknowledging the Jim Peterson Education Trust Fund. A gift in Jim Peterson's memory was given to Teton Science Schools by his family after he passed. He was a photographer who loved Bhutan and traveled there often and also loved Teton Science Schools. And so it was with his family's kindness and generosity that really has sparked and allowed us to do a lot of this work in partnership together. And so I'm grateful to him for his connection. Here, I want to share the goals for the symposium as well. So as we set out as an organizing committee between Teton Science Schools, Samsi College of Education, and the Bhutan Youth Development Fund, we identified these goals to help guide what we hope to achieve in the symposium. So the first is to share the current practices of place-based education and to in Bhutanese schools and education institutions. We hope to advance place-based education and education for gross national happiness by exposing more educators to the practices and to create a platform for academics as well as place-based education practitioners to share opportunities and challenges of applying place-based education. As we continued our work, we developed these 3 themes, and you'll see presentations and hopefully you've seen already posters on these 3 themes. The themes are place-based educator development, promoting authentic partnerships, and finding hope and understanding. Then our plan for the event, our plan for the symposium is that we'll begin with welcomes and overview, where we are now. Then we'll transition into our keynote panel that will focus on place, culture, and resilience. Then we'll take a break with some music from about 10:30 to 10:45. And then when we come back from the break, we will have 2 concurrent tracks of individual presentations. And following that, those individual presentations, we'll have 1 final individual presentation that everyone will get the chance to see, and then come back together for voting, awards, and closing. Finally, I wanted to just preface that we will have voting for awards at the end. We'll award 2 best posters and 2 best individual presentations. They'll be based on some of the themes of the symposium. And so as you are watching and listening to presentations or reflecting on the posters, keep these in mind, and hopefully you'll be ready to cast a vote at the end for what you think is the best presentation. Thank you all so much for being here, and Dr. Rita, I'll turn it back to you now.
Thank you, Leslie, for your welcome word and helping to make the I'm so sorry. I was actually, I didn't realize that I was muted. So I would like to thank Leslie for your welcome word, and then for helping us to realize Jim Peterson's vision for the education system of Bhutan. And I hope that we will be able to fulfill his vision. Now with this, I would like to invite Mr. Lendup Dukpa from the My Gaki Village project of the Bhutan Youth Development Fund. Sir Lendup, you are muted lah. We cannot still hear you, lah, Sir Lendup.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. Because I was muted from the other side. That's why. Last, let me introduce myself. Thank you, Dr. Rita. I'm Lendu Dukpa from My Gaki Village School. Previously, I worked as the unit head for Professional Development Center under the Royal Education Council. And I was sent on secondment to the Bhutan Youth Development Fund by the Ministry of Education to actually assist the Youth Development Fund with the establishment of place-based education model school somewhere in the Punakha. So let me also join Ms. Leslie and Dr. Rita in welcoming, first of all, the honorable keynote speaker, the president of Samse College of Education. Thank you, sir, for your inspiring speech. I also would like to welcome other keynote speakers and distinguished guests, the presenters from the schools and from the colleges, and also welcome all the participants from across the globe to this live international symposium on place-based education. I would like to very briefly share with all the participants here how the place-based education is benefiting our system and how it took roots in the Bhutanese education system. So as Ms. Leslie mentioned earlier, and then also the keynote speaker mentioned that the place-based education actually started in 2008 with the signing of a memorandum of understanding with the Royal Government of Bhutan. So since then, starting from 2008 to till 2013, our records show that there were about 27 officials from the Ministry of Education and Samse College of Education actually got an opportunity to visit Tibetan Science School and attend some professional development program over there. And in addition, about 6 graduate students actually spent a year-long education. They actually graduated from there after 1 year's study. And then between 2013 and 2017, about 193 teachers actually got the opportunity to attend the training program in Bhutan. And then from 2017 onwards, the Royal Education Council was given this responsibility to organize and oversee the implementation of place-based education. So with that understanding, the Royal Education Council signed an MOU with the Tibetan Science School to actually roll out the program in all the primary schools in the country. And so with that initiative from Teton Science School, from the Ministry of Education and the Royal Education Council, we have now trained about 36 master trainers at the national level, and 143 school principals from primary schools have actually attended the program as training of trainers. And about 647 primary school teachers actually went through the 10 days training program. And now we have 27 teachers who attended the advanced virtual learning program on place-based education. So some of them are here to make their presentations either in the form of poster presentations or in live their presentations. So I'm quite happy with that. And just very briefly to talk about why we are actually implementing place-based education in the country is, if you have actually seen this book, this is the recent publication from the Department of School Education and Professional Development. It says bringing curriculum into place. Now, this explains all about the concept of place-based education. Earlier, we have the system of bringing the place into the curriculum in the form of textbooks. So that's why we need to do a lot of teaching to students, because students were learning from the textbooks. So that's why the examinations and everything. Now, through the place-based education, what we are saying is we have to bring the curriculum into the place where children are there. And at this moment, when the COVID, we are hit by this COVID pandemic, I think place-based education gives us an opportunity, you see, a wonderful opportunity to allow our children to continue the education from home, from the places where they are. No, they need not come to school if they are not able to come to school. So teachers can provide them, give them the guidance online, help them with their assignments or project works. Children can actually study everything that they want to study from home, from the local places, from the communities, from the parents. So this is what place-based education brings us at this moment. It brings us this wonderful opportunity to allow our children to continue their studies. So with this, once again, I would like to thank especially Ms. Leslie. Today, if we think that the place-based education program is becoming successful in the country, we have to thank Ms. Leslie for keeping place-based education program alive in Bhutan. As you see, with our support and with that support from the colleagues from Teton Science Schools, they have done a wonderful job here. And even with this symposium, Ms. Leslie took the leadership to put all these programs together. So with this, let me once again thank everyone for joining this symposium, and wish you all Dashidale, Karinchela.
Thank you, Sir Landup. And then we know that you are a firm advocate of place-based education, and we will always look towards you to advance this place-based education in our school system. Thank you once again, Sir Landup. Now I would like to request Ms. Sanon to take over the session, where she will be presenting us with 3 distinguished place-based educators. So over to you, Sanon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rita. And greetings, esteemed educators and students. My name is Shannon Shuptrine, and I work with the professional learning team of Teton Science Schools, along with my colleagues Leslie and Chris. And we are thrilled to have so many of us gathered across ocean, from mountains to mountains. It is my pleasure to introduce our keynote panel. This evening, the keynote panel title is Place, Culture, and Resilience. The story of resilience begins with place, demonstrated in the awareness and observation of the diverse landscape we call home. Panelists from the Buffalo Bill Center of the West in Cody, Wyoming in the United States will discuss their experiences within the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. I'm going to now invite Hunter C. Old Elk, Heather Bender, and Nathan Doerr to introduce themselves, and I will be helping to facilitate this discussion. There will be some time for some participation and some questions at the end, so you can look forward to that. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Hunter, Heather, and Nathan. Thank you. Thank you. It looks like we're working on some unmuting, and we'll be with you in just a moment.
Great. So while Heather and Nathan get going with that, I'll first introduce myself. Dishoda Ichik Bachajik. My name is Hunter Old Elk, and my proname is Biabasana, which means woman in the front. And I am both Yakima and Crow Nations, an Indigenous woman, and also an educator, a historian, and a museum curator. And so I have the distinct pleasure of being the assistant curator of the Plains Indian Museum here in Cody, Wyoming. And my role is as the steward and facilitator of Indigenous cultures, specifically those of the Great Plains. And we base that around here in the United States and Canada, the Saskatchewan River in Canada, down to the Rio Grande of Texas. And those are the nations that we represent prior to colonization and the nations that were forcibly there because of colonization. And so we have a little over 10,000 collections of everyday clothing, tools, and then the more spiritual and sacred items. And so my role with place-based education is as the curator, but also as an Indigenous advocate, advocating for the story of tribal people. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. My name is Nathan Doerr, and I'm the former curator of the Draper Natural History Museum at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. And I had the incredible opportunity of welcoming visitors from all over the globe to the incredible greater Yellowstone ecosystem and introducing them to what a special place it was to us and encouraging them to find that special connection to that place. And I just wanted to briefly give a synopsis of when we say greater Yellowstone ecosystem, what we mean. And then I'll give Heather a chance to introduce herself. But I want to add too that while I was at the Draper Museum, I had the tremendous opportunity to work with Hunter and Heather to utilize place as the context of telling the story of beautiful culture and places. So when we think about the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, greater Yellowstone describes, as you might expect, this larger interconnected landscape around Yellowstone National Park. And ecosystem, on the other hand, describes the intricate and the beautiful biological community of the interacting organisms with their physical environment. The term Greater Yellowstone was first used as the result of scientific research as two brothers, the Craighead brothers, researched the movements of grizzly bears. And they found that grizzly bears were moving outside of the boundaries of the park onto surrounding lands. And so the Craighead brothers used the term Greater Yellowstone ecosystem to describe the larger ecological realities surrounding what we know and celebrate as Yellowstone National Park. To give you an idea of the size of the Greater Yellowstone, it measures approximately 8.9 million hectares. It's found in northwest Wyoming, southwest Montana, and in eastern Idaho, 3 states in the western United States. The Greater Yellowstone ecosystem includes 2 national parks, Yellowstone at its core, which is celebrating its 150th anniversary this year, portions of 5 national forests, 12 designated wilderness areas, 3 national wildlife refuges, tribal lands of the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho, and other federal, state, and private lands. We can begin to understand quickly how incredibly complex this landscape is. And I've only mentioned the size and scale. We haven't begun to talk about the geology, the flora, the fauna, or the people. What we consider today as the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem is a land that has been inhabited for nearly 15,000 years, a land that continues to be a place of convergence for some 27 tribes of Great Plains, Great Basin, and Plateau regions. These tribes utilized the resources and continue to steward the sacred sites, places, and landscapes of this incredible region. But it's also a land of convergence for visitors from across the globe who each year come to this incredible place to take in its awe and its beauty. When we think about the people in this place, their connection to this place, and the meaning of this place, the story becomes even more complex and even more beautiful. And there are countless identities and cultures and diversities represented on this landscape, but as especially Hunter and Heather will explore, it's important that we consider the conflicts, the resolutions, but most importantly, the resiliency that takes place on this landscape each and every day.
Hi, thanks, Nathan and Hunter. I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name is Heather Bender, and my official position here at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West is Native Education Outreach Specialist. And really what that means is I am a steward of place. My role is to create the space, the place, the conduit for connection. Nathan has alluded to the complexity and the size and the scope of the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And that really grounds us in our educational pathways that we are taking. And my job is to help connect all of the resources, the objects that Hunter mentioned that are in our collection here at the Center of the West. Our resources, our human resources, that people like Hunter, like Nathan, our other museum educators, our public school educators, connect them also to native or indigenous knowledge keepers across the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem and across the even larger context of the state of Wyoming. So that is my role. It's not a tiny one, but it's a very, very fulfilling one.
Thank you, panelists. We are so grateful that you are here, and I am hoping that maybe someday some of the folks that are watching tonight will be able to visit you at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. I think that you are all in store for hearing a wonderful perspective again on place and resiliency. And I'm going to get us started tonight by asking the first question, and we again will leave some time for all of you to ask questions in the chat at the end. So if you have a question along the way, go ahead and write it down, save it, and we'll take some of those questions at the end. So the first question tonight is, what have we learned from the last 150 years? And what does the next 150 years look like?
Great, so I'll take that question. And I'd like to put it in the context that 150 years represents when the National Park Service, our Theodore Roosevelt at the time was the American president, and he created what was the world's first national park, and that was 150 years ago. And so that is what established the boundary that we now understand as Yellowstone National Park. And in the context of the occupation of this land, 150 years is very, very young. And alluding back to Nathan's point that this land has more so, and I don't have a better adjective for it, but occupied, lived on, lived succinctly, and in motion with the land for 15,000 years. And so those represent the nations that are currently the Shoshone people, first and foremost, then the Blackfeet people that occupy what is now the Glacier National Park on the border of the United States and Canada, to the nations that later on moved into this region as of 600, 700, and 800 years ago, my tribe itself. And so my Beulah Gap, Sala Gap people who I belong to consider this place sacred for many reasons. And so 150 years represents this massive movement of people as occupation was happening. And I make that statement in that colonization in the United States came at a very, very, very hard and very difficult place for Indigenous people in this land. And as our Indigenous people were being pushed off into reservation systems, they were losing more and more of their ability to interact with those places. And so 150 years looks like this very difficult history. And the next 150 years looks like Indigenous people and these nations reclaiming what is their sovereignty, and reclaiming what is rightfully theirs in many ways. And so I think 150 years is a beautiful thing because we take what was represented and created in Yellowstone National Park with it and its awesomeness. And I'd like to think of a better adjective, but it is. Yellowstone National Park is awesome in the ecological diversity of what is there in 50% of the world's geysers and thermal pools being in one region. And the breath and the life of Yellowstone National Park, that it is a living and breathing entity. And that is how Indigenous people, and that is how scientists and many different people that are related to it see. And, you know, it's a 4 million year old volcano that is active and breathing, and it has this breath, and it provides this environment for so many people. But at that expense. And so we start looking at resilience, and we look at the resilience of place, but we look at the resilience of the people that live here, are the people that have lived there. And so I like to think the next 150 years is protecting this space, going back to what has been erased, protecting that, and also looking at how do we move forward. And I think, you know, one of the largest issues with Yellowstone National Park is climate change. And it's the changing of our world at the expense of so many other things. And so those of us that live in this region, I mean, we're seeing the impact that has, including massive forest fires, the loss of boundary in some areas to privatization, more and more sites, critical sites being threatened, and then the impact that world tourism has. And so these are very large themes that not just one group can represent, but I think as a collective we can do so. But there's also this way in which I think Indigenous tribes can matronize the place again, and matronize in the sense that we start to see this as a provider and as a place that isn't just a resource, but as this living, breathing entity of who we are in our spirituality. So thank you.
Hunter. Nathan or Heather, would you like to answer any part of that question?
I wouldn't mind adding just a few thoughts. Hunter, as always, Hunter, you are so incredibly eloquent. And I can't really follow up on that, except to say that one of the ways that I think place-based education has a role in the future, the 150 years moving forward, is that particularly with our context of Wyoming, the state of Wyoming recognized that place-based education is important, and so is all the voices that go along with that. So we added something called an Indigenous Education for All, and we're just beginning to implement that. And it really is very, very hand in hand with place-based education. You cannot separate people from place and expect students to make the kinds of connections that are necessary to grow and be healthy. So by us restoring some level of native voice into our education system in the state of Wyoming, hopefully we're creating that space. As I talked about holding space, we're creating space and place for those voices to rise to the top.
So well said. And I would just add, I think I have hope that in the next 150 years that the value and the role and the commonality of place-based education will become an everyday thing for everyone. And just the role of, as Hunter mentioned, with climate change as a single example, and being able to see these changes in this place on a daily basis and starting to wonder why and what can we do to change that. The core of that is place-based education, being able to understand this place and utilize this place as our teacher.
Well, Sir President, I saw you had a wonderful question in the chat, and I think with a few of the questions that we will continue with, some of the pieces that you put in the chat will be answered here, I hope. My next question for our panelists is, how does Indigenous sovereignty and the sanctity of nature coexist?
So thank you, Sir President, for that question. And as I was listening to our opening statements from our distinct and esteemed colleagues, I started to think about how there was that beautiful emphasis that we have on children right now, and the emphasis that we should always have on children. I'd like to add the emphasis that we have on elders. And so COVID-19 has proven that there was a collective international trauma. And I think place-based education is a way that we can restore some of what was lost, but there's almost leaning into the insecurity and what can be taught. And so I love the idea that Bhutan is emphasizing child rearing and the ability for parents to also take on that responsibility of teaching. And that is very much in line with like Indigenous child rearing. And so we have an emphasis on the way that children are the new breath in life, and that there's a special relationship with elders. And so COVID-19 was really hard on our children, but it was really hard on our Indigenous elders. And so we started to see, a lot of loss of language as our elders had passed from COVID. And our loss of culture because of that. And so when you don't have that relationship with young people learning from the old, there's so much that's lost, and and that's a threat, and that's a disaster. And so going back to Shannon's beautifully written question, what is Indigenous sovereignty? Sovereignty is the inherent right of a nation to protect its people. And so in the United States, there are 567 576 indigenous nations, but that make up a little under 2% of the United States population. And there are state recognized tribes and there are tribes that are not recognized. And so that is a large group of tribal people that each have their own belief systems, their own cosmologies, worldviews, and ability to govern themselves. Well, a lot of those sovereign nations, their laws predate that of the United States. And so we take the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem where the Fort Laramie treaties, there's 2 of them, were what my tribe, the Crow people, and then the Johnson Treaty, my other tribe, the Yakima people, created with the United States. And the rights that were in those treaties predate statehood. And so tribal people have these inherent rights to interact and to relate to the land and the resources. And so sovereignty is protecting our children and our elders, but then it's also inherently taking on our sovereign right and enforcing that the best way that we can. And so how does nature coexist with us? That question, they're one and the same. Sovereignty is directly related to land. And we see this in ceremony, but we also see it in these legal powers that the United States government the United States government tries to enforce over and over again, but don't have the right to. Oh, Shannon, can you say it again?
Yes, I thank you to Hunter. Nathan or Heather, would you like to add anything?
The only thing I would add is that indigenous sovereignty is heavily addressed in the Indian Education for All standards. And so one of my tasks is to help provide the teachers in Wyoming with the resources and the connections to tribal leaders and communities so that they can understand maybe for the first time how important tribal sovereignty is and how it does predate anything that students may have heard about how the United States government is run. For example, I was working with some teachers recently, and this is a teacher who lives and works in a community called Riverton, Wyoming, which is really fairly close to what we're talking about in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, but very, very close as well to our Wind River reservation where Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho nations reside primarily. And he was teaching a unit, or had been teaching for years, a unit on government to 4th and 5th grade students. And for the first time, because of some of the legislation to include indigenous voices and places into the curriculum, he realized, well, wait a minute, we haven't been talking about the sovereign nations that are 15 minutes away from our school. How do I go ahead about doing that? And we figured out a way to get him connected to elders and leaders in those communities. So that's really moving forward into that next 150 years. Sovereignty is important, but it's also connected that, as Hunter said, to place, because these children are connected to their places. And when you can make their communities essential and valuable in their place and create the space for that context, you've got a path forward.
Heather, it's a good reminder that doing things the way that they have always been done is not always the right pathway forward, and Bhutan is setting a good example of evolution. I saw that comment come up in the chat as well. Nathan, anything to add for that question?
No, those were both beautiful answers, so I'll leave them at that.
Great, thank you so much. The next question I'd like to ask is about the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem and what the international attraction to the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem is.
So I think there's two parts to answer this question. There's the historic reasoning for why people have been attracted to this. And so that goes beyond our 150 years, but the 15 million or the 15,000 years that that place has been occupied by humans. And then the 4.3 million years that that place has been a living and breathing entity. And so we can see this in many different ways. For Indigenous people, and the answer, it is because it provides so many resources and so much about what life represented for tribal people. So it was a place that is rich in food sources. It's rich in materials that provide shelter. There's medicinal plants. There are animals that are found in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. It's the thermal pools and the medicinal relationship that tribal people had with those places. Internationally, I think it also has to do with the way that international heritage sites are protected. And so Yellowstone National Park is on the World Heritage List that is a part of UNESCO. And so there's different criteria for why Yellowstone ecosystem remains an international attraction, as many tourism throughout the world is also on that list. What's interesting about the Yellowstone ecosystem is it's both a heritage site, but it's also a cultural environment and landscape. And so we see why there's so many institutions that are interested in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, the mission of Teton Science Schools, the mission of the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, why our federal government has a collective interest in promoting tourism, but it's also for the protection of place too. And so there's not one easy answer for that question, but I think it's an incredible place, and I can see why there's so many bodies that want to be a part of it and want to tour it and want to experience that for the first time. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear what Nathan has to also say about this question.
Yeah, no, it's, as you said, it's such just an awesome place. It's so unique, and I think just to demonstrate that uniqueness and think close to home before thinking internationally, and Hunter referenced this, but looking at archaeological sites as an example, there are approximately 2,000 archaeological sites documented just in Yellowstone National Park. That's not the entire ecosystem. And those archaeological sites represent occupation and use and the sacredness of that place from the last ice age all the way through recent history. And that doesn't account for the fact that just less than 3% of the area that is Yellowstone National Park alone has been inventoried. And so I think that just demonstrates on a local scale just how truly special and unique this place is and has been for that 15,000 years. And we keep saying that, but that just is so integral to the story of this place. And so then we put that onto a global scale, and just the uniqueness and the iconicness that is a trip to Yellowstone National Park for those amazing geothermal features and just its natural beauty.
And Nathan, maybe I could follow that up with asking you about how access by others to the Greater Yellowstone impacts our connection with it.
Oh, and that's a great follow-up. Thank you, Shannon. There are, as we've explored, there are so many reasons for Yellowstone and the Greater Yellowstone to be an international attraction. In fact, last year alone, approximately 4.5 million people visited Yellowstone National Park. That's a record-setting number of visitors. And we would be remiss to not acknowledge that part of that increase is the result of more people taking to nature, spending more time outside, and taking to nature as a source of nurture as a result of the pandemic. And that's had an immense impact. If we think over time, trappers and miners, hunters, various expeditions, the establishment of Western colonization, and of course, countless visitors, thinking about this place having been a destination for so many people for so long, there have absolutely been impacts on not just the place, but the culture and the identity. And impacts such as the introduction of invasive species, the development of infrastructure, buildings, roads, bridges, the extirpation or localized extinction of species of flora and fauna, impacts on air quality and soundscape and light pollution, and just overall land use. But for many of us, I feel that those impacts in some ways have strengthened our own connections with this place. Those impacts, I feel, result in advocacy, the desire to take better care of this place, to ensure its continued protection and preservation for generations to come.
And Hunter or Heather, anything to add?
Well, I can speak from two sides of that that equation a little bit. I'm not originally from the place that I do call home and intend to make my life's home forever, which is here in this greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So like many people, I trekked to Yellowstone for the first time as a young adult. And so I understand that draw for tourism, but now that I'm here and I've decided to call it my home, I want people to love the place as much as I do, but I also want to make sure that we can love it in a way that is sustainable.
Thank you, Heather. Are there other ways that, from your perspective, that you can see continued engagement, that folks can find new ways and pathways for new engagement with the greater Yellowstone ecosystem?
Yeah, I'll take that one. And that leads so well into the kind of the past discussion. When I think about engaging with the landscape, of course, things like hiking and camping and other forms of outdoor recreation come to mind, but the greater Yellowstone ecosystem presents even more opportunities for meaningful engagement, more meaningful connections. And I believe that people are eager for that. So I'll share just two specific examples. We see this in very successful citizen science programs throughout the ecosystem. One example is in the phenology project in Grand Teton, so kind of in the south of Yellowstone National Park, and it's called Wildflower Watch. Phenology is the study of the cyclic and seasonal natural phenomena, so especially in relation to climate and the activities of animals or the life cycles and stages of plants. And a variety of people come out to be involved in that phenology to document the changes that they're observing. Many of those changes the result of the impacts of this increased visitation. And I think there's such beauty in a program like a phenology to then make connections to what we're observing today to traditional native uses of plants, as Hunter alluded to a bit ago, as well as
It looks like Nathan might be frozen for the moment. Maybe we can let him finish if he unfreezes, but I will move on to a next question in the meantime. Unless Heather or Hunter, would you like to respond to that last question?
Well, I would just like to add just one more program that perhaps Nathan was going to talk about, but there's an incredible program happening with the Eastern Shoshone tribe, which is one of two nations here in the state of Wyoming. And their project lead is Jason Valdez, and he's a tribal member. And he's actually working to create a space and a home for Yellowstone bison who would otherwise be culled for overpopulation. And they're taking these bison that need to be moved from Yellowstone National Park into tribal lands and back into tribal protection. At the same time, they're trying to create a pathway from the Wind River Reservation to Yellowstone, and so these animals can migrate back and forth. And so it's this beautiful way in which tribal members are working with scientists and ecologists and educators at the federal and state level to the tribal level. And so that is just one of many programs. And one of the attractions that I think people have with this space is not for just science, but it's also this collective thought around protecting our place and protecting our populations of animals too.
Nathan, I see you're back and moving. Did you want to finish up?
Sure. No, I apologize for that. Thank you. I'm not sure when I dropped out, but it sounds like Hunter picked up exactly where I was headed. I would just share one statistic regarding that very successful bison management program is since 2019, nearly 200 bison had been transferred, as another example, from Yellowstone National Park to the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in Montana. And of those, nearly 100 were transferred then to the Intertribal Buffalo Council, who then distributed them to 18 tribes in 10 US states. So it just shows the impact and the unique engagement, because it's not just a matter of relocating these bison out of the park onto these reservations. It's, as Hunter mentioned, it's a community engagement. It's a return of culture. It's tremendous and it's beautiful. And so between that and these citizen science programs, I just think there's such special place-based engagement opportunities that we're seeing just build even stronger and stronger.
Well, and I can definitely speak to the impact that Indigenous people of the plains have with the buffalo or the bison. And it's more than just relying on them as a food or as a source of shelter, but it's this relationship where we're emphasizing what they teach us and the way in which bison are matriarchal and they're matrilineal. And so their societies focus on the role of the oldest cow, and she is the protector. And we've learned so many of these stories. And so for tribal people, a lot of times humans see ourselves as very pitiful, sort of impractical beings. You take an elk or a bison and they are born, and within 2 days, they have every one of their resources and ability to sustain their environment. They have their skin that is covered in this beautiful tuft or this hair. They rely on their parents, and humans are not like that. You know, it takes us a really long time to be able to be self-reliant. And so in a way, tribal people emphasize our relationship with animals more. And to be able to see these programs supported and being able to go back to relying on them and celebrating in song and celebrating in ceremony. It's such an impactful, beautiful thing.
Hunter, I think the story of the return of the bison to Wind River Reservation is a beautiful story of resilience and of both people and land. Just looking at the time, I think we'll do 2 more questions here, and then we'll leave some time for some participation from all of our esteemed colleagues. I would like to ask, how does place-based education support and sustain Indigenous education? And what are your roles as educators in emphasizing those stories?
I can start that one out if you don't mind. Place-based education and Indigenous education are reciprocal. They are highly connected. And we have in the United States, there is a Native American botanist, Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. If you've never heard of her, Hunter, she hears from me a lot about Dr. Kimmerer, but she wrote a book called Braiding Sweetgrass. And one of the things that she talks about is the honorable harvest. And this idea of never take more than you need and never take the last one and always give back and be grateful. These are very much life ways of Indigenous communities. Many Indigenous communities share these. And I know many educators that share these as well. And it really does ground you in that sense of place-based education, because those things that you interact with on a daily basis, regardless of where you may be on the planet, your place, and the plants, animals, the environment around you and the people around you, all of those things interconnect in a very, it's lyrical if you stop and take a moment and you listen. And Indigenous education allows you to take that breath and listen. And place-based education allows you to take a breath and listen. For example, when all the presenters were just starting to come on and participants were joining, I heard in the background birds. And for me, I didn't feel like a voice in the ether. I was grounded in your place by hearing that bird. And I felt connected in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that's the beauty of Indigenous education and place-based education when they work hand in hand.
Heather, I heard the birds too, and also had a similar, it just brought some joy. Nathan or Hunter, would you like to chime in on that question?
I think what I will add is there's this opportunity for allies to give space and to give space to voices that aren't otherwise emphasized. And so the role that we've done with our Indian education outreach is taking the opportunity to engage with different tribal members and different educators and highlight and steward their voices and their cosmologies and their worldviews, and creating a space where they are leading the conversation the way that they want to lead it and righting a lot of wrongs when they didn't have that opportunity. And so, you know, just as myself to be able to sit in this virtual space and learn from our colleagues all over the world. Many tribal people have this belief that when we speak things, we bring them into fruition. And I'd like to think when we created and we went about engaging with this place-based symposium, it was under the guise that we have children that need to be taught. And it doesn't matter, that's something that we have a similar life experience regardless of our cultures. is that we emphasize our children. And so I feel so blessed to be sitting in a space where I have all of these educators from throughout the world who have taken on that responsibility and are doing it in the way that they can, and in what's going on in worldwide. I mean, educators have had to do so much over the last 2 years, and to still sit there and have a commitment to these children is incredible. So that's my part, saying thank you to you as well.
And I would just jump on very quickly because that's so beautiful, and just say it's about honoring the complexities and being open about the complexities of place and the complexities of the people on that place.
And then I don't want to pass over this comment. Perhaps Leslie or Shannon can answer, how long has Teton Science Schools been implementing place-based education?
Well, that's a great question. I think from the beginning, which is over 50 years, but maybe not always with those particular words attached. Leslie, I don't know if you have more to say on that matter, but I do think the original intent was to have people immersed in place and learning from place and in place. And the science schools is over 50 years old. Leslie, anything to add there?
I think place-based education is a newer name for something that, as Hunter and Heather and Nathan have shared, has been done for thousands of years, and so really, it's a newer term and has a long, deep history. Yeah, thank you.
And I would also say that Teton Science Schools is committed to emphasizing Indigenous voices and recognizing that history that goes back, in perpetuity and through the generations. So we're very, very grateful to have Hunter, Heather, and Nathan here to discuss that. We are coming to the question portion, but I think Hunter had one last question to ask all of you. And my colleague Chris is going to put a link into the chat to a poll that you can take. It's a Mentimeter poll, it is called, and you will be asked, you can click on the link and it should open a window and you'll be able to write down 3 words in response to Hunter's question. And then we'll take a few more questions, and at the end, Chris will share your responses as a word cloud so that we can see what all of you bring to the discussion that way. So I'll let Hunter ask that question and then we'll move on to a few other questions.
Absolutely. So my question for you, and our question as a collective, is what can Bhutan teach us about their relationship with place? So I'll ask it one more time. What can Bhutan teach us about their relationship with place?
So I invite you, if you would like to try this out, to check the chat, to click on the link. When that window opens, you'll be able to put 3 words or phrases into the Mentimeter in response to Hunter's question about what Bhutan has to teach us about relationship to place. Thank you. And as you're doing that, if you finish and you do have a question you would like to ask the panelists, I do see one that's in there. Can PBE be applied to effectively to high school where it's exam oriented with fixed curriculum? Heather, do you feel like you might have some answers to that question?
I'll give it a shot. I think it can be applied effectively. I'll give you an example from my own children's schooling. I have 17-year-old twins, a boy and a girl, and in their middle school education, so when they were in their early teens, I want to say 13, 14, one of the things that they were learning about was climate and sustainability. And they put together some science experiments that their teacher took to the trash circle in the Pacific. And they did science experiments with these kids' experiments and brought them back, and the kids got to engage with them. And then they applied some of that learning specifically to their own place. So they looked at the local river in the community we were living in at the time, and then applied some of the things that they learned about how to create a more sustainable world. And a group of kids actually went to all the restaurants in the community and used their learning, place-based, science-based, very grounded information to get all the restaurants in the community to switch to sustainable packaging, so that they weren't sending trash to the Pacific. That's just one example, I think, how place-based education practices can be used at a higher level. Now that my kids are in high school, they're using some of the concepts that they're learning, and they're still taking the exams and the things that they're required to do, but the projects are very based in their community and the kinds of things that they're learning about the people and the events in the community. For example, this is not my children's learning, but a high school teacher that I've been working with, she's taught a particular book for a very long period of time, and kids weren't very connected to it. And then she started talking about local people in the community that had a connection to the events that happened within that book. And then all of a sudden it came alive in a way that it hadn't come before. And this was high school level, really looking at things like identity, things that are important in your life, your connectivity to your communities. And the book didn't connect to them until she started bringing in the local connection to them. I hope that helped answer that question.
I think it did. It's good to have great examples. Thank you, Heather. And I would say that also in our experience coaching schools in place-based education, that we see many high schools moving away from strictly doing exams at the higher levels and doing more performance assessment and portfolio work that are connected to projects and all of the components of place-based education. It looks like there, yes, there's another question in, people have always been responsible for depleting ecosystems because of various activities. How has high volume tourism in Yellowstone National Park impacted the ecosystem, and how are you dealing with it? This might be our last question, but Nathan, do you want to start with that, and then Hunter and Heather could chime in?
Sure. Yeah, it's again the idea of complexity, but the impacts, we can't deny the impacts that are happening, and especially when we're seeing increase each year from year to year. And I think Heather alluded to or mentioned it earlier. Just our role, I think, has to become, I know our role has to become stronger in encouraging appropriate use, love, and care for these places. So in the case of a museum, especially in a gateway community, the role of really educating our visitors as they are about to go into Yellowstone, what is it to respect this place and to care for it? And then it goes all the way up to state and federal rules and regulations and activities to help try and preserve this place. And changing the way we do things. Thinking about climate and alternative energy sources. The Park Service is always adapting and trying to grow into best practices and green practices, just to continue to preserve that place for so many generations to come. So highly complex, but it's so integral. And again, it's all about place-based education and applying that not just to school children, but to adults as well.
Well, and I would just add to that, I think Heather and Nathan have really beautifully stated, but it's also teaching an international kind of responsible tourism, and doing that internationally and recognizing that when we go to other nations, we respect their laws and we respect their practices and their processes, and vice versa. They also come here and they respect ours. And so I think it's, promoting this international awareness about, what does conscious tourism look like, and how do we do that responsibly and healthy. And I think that's something I've been impressed as I've gone through this process of learning about Bhutan, is Bhutan taking their sovereignty and their ability to say, this is who we want to come into our nation. This is how it responsibly is done. And having that support from His Majesty and Her Majesty all the way down to their students. And I'm just absolutely impressed by that. And one day, hopefully, I would love to be a visitor in your home and your place and learn from you. But until then, I'm very happy with this forum and to learn from you all.
Shannon, could I just really quickly, I know we're a little bit over, but I've seen this echoed a couple of times, and I don't want to leave this hanging. The concern about place-based education and how to do that when you have higher level fixed exams. We have that same concern here. My children have to worry about these high stakes tests. And what we're beginning to move to is an understanding that it's process, not product. And the way I look at it is, if you are engaged in an educational learning process, the product will come, the product will be good. And if we focus on being in the moment and in the process, the end product will happen. And I've seen it with my own children. Those engagements in those kinds of place-based education and those product-based, or those real-world assessment kinds of activities have actually improved their test scores on these fixed tests, because they can do it, and they can show that they can do it. I hope that helped, at least from my perspective, answer that question.
For tying that up. I appreciate that, Heather. And we are just a couple of minutes over. I think as we transition back to Dr. Rita and Leslie to take us into the musical component of this morning's program for many of you. I'm going to ask Chris one last time if he would screen share the words and the phrases that you all put into the Mentimeter, so we can just reflect on that one final time, if that works, Chris. Thank you. And again, many of you may know how these word clouds work. If you haven't ever seen a word cloud before, the more often the word is repeated, then the larger that it appears. There is a wonderful, wonderful variety, though, of things that we can learn from you about your connection to place. Culture stands out.
Compassion, that is such a beautiful and important theme.
Wonderful. Any last words from our panelists before we turn it over?
I would just like to thank all of you for inviting us to spend time with you this morning. And I'm very grateful, humbled, and honored. And I am looking forward to the remainder of the sessions and hearing from each of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon, for that wonderful panel session. I would also like to join Shannon in thanking our panelists for sharing their works and strategies of engaging educators and students in culturally and naturally responsive ecosystem through a multidisciplinary approach to place-based education. Just to recall my visit to the Yellowstone, one of the world's natural wonders. So when Leslie told us like the next day we'll be visiting the Yellowstone Park, so we were quite scared because when we browse the internet, so there are some scary cautions saying that volcano might erupt from Great Yellowstone anytime that might affect the entire world. But that didn't happen during our visit. So I agree with the panelists that it is the real live ground that depicts place-based education ecosystem, which includes around 25 indigenous tribes, a diverse flora and fauna, ongoing volcanic activity in every corner, natural geysers and geothermal phenomena, and some recreational centers. So it's wonderful to know that in addition to humans, even plants and animals are adapting and building resilience in the face of such incredible natural phenomena and climate change. So I hope that this panel session will also inspire our Bhutanese educators to present to the outside world our unique culture, heritage, values, natural wonders, which we have also preserved with resilience against external forces, natural phenomena, and disasters through such events like this forum. So as Shannon announced, so next in the agenda is a break with music. So let's rather call it as a musical break. So it has been planned for 15 minutes, but I think we have just 10 minutes more. So we had actually planned to have our students perform live for us, but our students have not yet arrived at the college as they are taking online classes. So we'll be playing a music video created by one of our postgraduate classes. The music video is dedicated to Bhutan's 114th National Day, which was celebrated last December on 17th December. So the students were the sole song composers, musicians, vocalists, and choreographers. So further, this music video was entirely created on a smartphone with no prior technical expertise. So this music video will take us through the history of Bhutanese monarchs and students' sense of nationalism, patriotism, and loyalty to the selfless leadership and sacrifices that our kings have made for the country's sovereignty. To make it more inclusive, we have included the song's lyrics in English. So after this musical break, so we will join the breakout rooms of our choice. But before I request Chris to play the musical video, so I would like to request all the esteemed audience here to switch on the camera so that we can take a group photo, because I see that many are leaving because they have some other important works to attend. So I think this will be the last chance. So I would like to request everybody to switch on the camera. We'll take some group photos and we will let Chris play the music video for us.
Belden Juba! Get
Oh, thank you, Dr. Rita and Sumsey College for putting together that beautiful video and music. That was wonderful. Dr. Rita, I think hopes for us to take a group photo. So if everyone would, if you're able to turn on your video, please do, and we will try to get a few snaps of this wonderful group of over 200 people who have gathered together on either a Friday night or Saturday morning to celebrate place-based education. So if you can unmute your, or turn on your camera and give a big smile. Right, Dr. Rita, let us know if you want any more photos or if you're getting what you hope.
I was actually muted, so I think we will take for all the pages, for all the screens. So let me start from screen 1. So I would like to request everybody to switch on their camera. Yes, on screen 1, we see everybody with their camera on. So 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. I hope I'm not taking much time. Just a minute. Yeah. Now I'm moving to screen 2. Yes, we have everybody except Madam Nidu Buangmo. If you could switch on your camera. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Screen 3. Sarchada, I would like to request you to switch on your camera, and 3 more. Dr. Sonam String. Anyway, let me take the photo. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Next page. Oh my God, we have 8 screens, full 8 screens. Yes, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Screen number 5. Here we are now. Screen number 5. I would like to request everybody to switch on their camera. Screen number 5, yes. Screen number 6. Here, many have switched off their camera. So I would like to request to switch on your camera so that we can take beautiful photo. Yes, 1, 2, 3. Screen 7. 1, 2, 3. Screen 8, final screen. 1, 2, 3. Yes. So with that now, Chris will open the breakout rooms and then we can join of our choice. And then we'll be back at 5 minutes past 12 for the common session.
Exactly. And Chris, if you'll share the slide that has the 2 different tracks on it. So as Chris is pulling that up, we're about to head into 2 concurrent tracks of breakout rooms for individual presentations. So up on the screen now are what the 2 different tracks are. We're going to try to keep both rooms on the same time schedule. So if you'd like to see the first presentation in track 1 and then switch to the second presentation in track 2, you should be able to do that. In a moment, when Chris opens up the breakout rooms, you'll have the choice which track you'd like to go into. We'd recommend now that you take a snap, take a photo or a screen capture of this slide so you can see what the tracks are and know what your options are. And this is also in the agenda of the symposium, so you can look there for more information as well. Chris will stay in the main room to answer any questions that come up, and enjoy these next sets of presentations. So Chris, I think when you are ready, we are.